Welcome to the Alive with Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Megan, and today we have a special host, Margot Desmond. She's going to be introducing me and asking me what the biggest lesson I've learned on my walk with God has been. So, thank you, Margot.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the podcast and letting me host.
Of course.
Very excited. You're in the hot seat, so get ready.
I am in the hot seat. I'm a little scared.
You gotta feel the pressure that you're giving to people. I wanted to just kind of introduce Megan. Megan is my favorite sister. I'm kidding.
Of course. I'm kidding.
But no, Megan is a pretty cool person. Megan is currently going to GCU and she's studying marketing with a minor in Christian ministry.
Biblical studies. Same thing.
Yeah. So she's pretty cool like that. She's actually a head life leader too this year, which is insane. And she is always doing something entrepreneurial and following God and seeking the Lord, and I'm so impressed. And she's full of wisdom, so get ready, guys. Get your notes, get your pens and your notebooks, because we got some things to write down.
The pressure's on now.
The pressure is on. Give the people what they want to hear. Okay, so I'm going to start it off with your question that you ask everybody. What is the biggest lesson, or one of the biggest lessons you've learned on your walk with God?
That's such a good question, and it's so hard, and now I'm realizing this is the hot seat with that question, because there's so many answers you could have. But what I've learned the most growing up, and then middle school and high school and college, has been it's so important to put your identity in God, and that's something you'll never regret. And like standing out may be hard like in a season, but it's something you'll never regret, and it'll always help you in the long run. Mm-hmm. So that's been the biggest lesson.
Okay, so take us back to kind of before high school, what life looked like and how you kind of got from there to like full-time high school.
Yeah, so I was baptized when I was 10, and that's when I showed like my family that I was a Christian. Like, this is where I put my identity. So in a way, my identity was in God, but I was still so afraid of what people thought that I wouldn't ask questions, and I didn't want like my parents or siblings to think that I either was questioning my faith or I didn't know much about the Bible, and I was so afraid of what they thought that kept me from strengthening my faith. And that's such an important part. Putting your identity in God is like showing you don't know it all and you want to learn more and gain more wisdom from people who are older than you, have had a longer faith journey than you. And that's something I wished I would have done, like fully invested in putting my identity in God.
Walk us through, like, how did you begin to start to really pursue God on your own and start asking those questions? Like, when did that start?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So when I was 10, I became a Christian. And then that whole time until my junior year, I was still afraid to ask questions, which I know is such a long time. And growing up in the faith, like, that's such a missed opportunity. I totally could have gone out and learned so much if I had just not cared so much about what people thought. But unfortunately, I didn't. So I put a lot of my time into running and doing well in school. And then when COVID happened, I decided to go to a private school because I didn't want to like be home anymore. I was so tired of like COVID and everything.
She really didn't want to be with me.
And then Margot went to GCU my freshman year, so I was like, I just need to go to a private school. Like, this seems like the right next step. And it was a great opportunity because it was a private Christian school. So in my head, I thought this will be a perfect opportunity to really strengthen my faith. Mm-hmm. And everyone here claims to be a Christian. This is a Christian school, and I was super excited to really dive into my faith. But this actually was kind of an obstacle in my faith because it was not what I had expected. It was more like forced. And while there were some people who really did put their identity in God, it also was a challenge for me because I kind of stood out in a way where I didn't want to do things that would lead me to feeling guilty. And like growing up, I had done some like rebellious things, I would say. I like stole when I was younger. I just had like, I don't know, like something in me, I just wanted control. And obviously, like, the sin nature we have, like, so that's probably why. But yeah, I, like, stole when I was younger and, like, did some other things and, like, felt so much guilt from it. And even, like, some siblings told me I wasn't a Christian. And that seems so big when you're younger. And so growing up in that, the devil really had a hold on me because the devil put so much guilt on me for stealing and for all these other things that I felt like I wasn't good enough to go to heaven. And obviously you aren't ever good enough. And I didn't truly understand and, like, internalize the gospel, even though I had been in a Christian house, going to church every Sunday and all of that. So then when I went to this Christian school and I had totally made my faith my own and knew the gospel and didn't want the devil to have any hold on me, I had no desire to do anything outside of, like, God's plan, if that makes sense. And so going through high school with that conviction can be super hard because a lot of high schoolers don't feel that way. And so that was a challenge for me. And that's also why I wanted to start the podcast, because I really relied on, like, podcasts and encouragement online when I didn't have that Christ-centered community. That's kind of what led to my junior year. And then my junior year, I ended up not running cross country for some family reasons. Running had been such a big part of my life, and having that taken away my junior year was so hard for me, but it was also, like, the best thing that could have happened to me because I did volleyball, which was not fun for me. Like, I'm so bad at volleyball, but volleyball was such a good opportunity to just, like, be humble. There's no way I'm making it to state in volleyball. There's no way, like, there are no, like, trophy opportunities in volleyball because I'm so bad. So it was purely for, like, the fun of it, and that brought me a lot of, like, friendships that I wouldn't have had otherwise through running. And it also gave me more time to fully put my identity in God. And that's when I started reading my Bible consistently. And with the family situation, I really had to put my faith in God and not have fear of the situation. So putting my faith in God and just being super rooted in my junior year was kind of the turnaround moment for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, I just want to say, like, standing out in high school is so tough. And so, like, props to you that, like, God gave you the strength. That's incredible. Also, I am curious, like, how did the shift go from being a really good runner, because she was amazing, and you are a good runner, but
not anymore.
really, really good in middle school, like, definitely stood out, and then always great grades, like, really committed to your academics. So what did that look like going from, those are things that you said you kind of identified with,
yes,
and now you go to a new school, you don't feel like they're really supporting you in your faith journey as much. You don't have running, you don't feel like the curriculum is as advanced. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I definitely did not navigate it perfectly, and there are so many things I wish I could have done different in high school, but you hit all the points. Like, running was huge for me in middle school, and COVID helped me let that go because I realized there's no way I was going to homeschool and then run at a good school. That was not going to be an option for me. And so it was either the Catholic school or the school I went to. And I also was super invested in my faith, and I didn't want to go to a school that didn't have my same beliefs. And so even though that was the better running school, at the end of the day, like, that wasn't really where I was seeing myself. And so, yeah, it just seemed like the right answer to go to this small private Christian school, and running ended up kind of being more of, like, a fun thing to do. But my freshman year, I took it so seriously, and I was devastated when my times were not good because obviously the training's so different, and that really matters. And so I would run by myself, like, run doubles, and work myself so much, and then I realized, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm running against God's plan. Like, this is not where God has me. Like, I'm at a totally different school with totally different goals. Like, I need to just reframe my mindset. And then also the academics were so different from Abeka, the homeschooling curriculum we had, and all of my 7 siblings had done that. And so I was, like, genuinely scared that I was, like, not going to turn out well. Because I was like, they all have great jobs, they're all doing well, and, like, what is going to happen to me? Like, I'm, like, going against the plan. What am I doing? But, yeah, again, I just had to reframe my mindset and realize this is what God has for me. It's totally different than I expected, and God has a good plan for me, and I just need to focus on him to truly know what that plan is.
Oh, that is like a wild ride, especially because you really were incredible at those things and you still are. So it's like, how do you enjoy those but not make them an idol in your life?
I think also my junior year not running was so helpful for me because I had been so competitive at making it to state that my mindset even was so bad in running. Like almost like angry when I would run. Like I just had to get these times. Like at this point I didn't want to run in college. So it was purely just to get times to like prove myself. And yeah, it was like not the right reasons to run at all. And then after my junior year track and then my senior year, I had 2 more seasons. And the mindset I went into my races was totally different. Like I ran with excitement and I didn't have like the list of like the holistic things I would do before, like braid my hair a certain way, like do an ice bath in like a sauna and like eat the certain meal. Like I was like so like particular about it. And then I realized like, no, this is in God's hands. Like it's okay. Like I don't have to stress this much about it. And then my senior year, I ran with so much more freedom, less anxiety. And I don't think I got 1 PR, honestly, but I just had so much less anxiety and just ran with joy. It was so night and day from before.
What would you say made the difference? Because it sounds like the identity shift happened junior year to senior year. Was there a certain moment where you felt that shift, or was it over time?
Yeah, it was truly just putting my faith in God during that family situation where I had no control, and I was like, well, it's all up to God. Like I have no control over this, and I know that I can't run now, and I need to read my Bible and use this time to strengthen my faith. And then I also started going to a different church because again, I just wanted to make my faith my own, and the church wasn't bad, but I just like wanted to go to a different church and really invest and make friends in that church.
No, and it was a really good season, I feel like. But I know we had talked about this earlier where you felt like your friends went to this school, the church that you went to was also associated with this school. So like everything you did was very locked into this one community. How did that affect the way that you pursued your faith or community?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I wish I could answer differently, but after my junior year cross-country season, like the first semester of my junior year, I was super consistent, read my Bible, super locked in. Then I started running again, and honestly, until college again, I wasn't super devoted to God. I wasn't super locked in and reading my Bible every day because there was like a lack of community who was really invested in God. Like, yes, there were Christians, but there's a difference between being so devoted to God, wanting to learn and grow in every way, to being a Christian but living different, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, I wasn't super involved in my faith, and I think having that Christian community would have been so helpful. But I do want this to be an encouragement to Christians who are in a similar situation to me, where you may be like struggling and you feel like you're not growing in your faith, but standing apart and getting through it and not falling into like sin when it's so easy to is huge, and you will thank yourself later, seriously. And like standing apart is so important.
I want to know, because I feel like there are probably people out there who are listening who are like, I'm in that season where I don't have community around me. I don't feel super fulfilled in my faith. Where do they start? Like, where do you even start? How do you stand up for God when you don't feel it yourself?
I think there are 2 things. I think it's so important to invest where you can. So maybe start a Bible study. Maybe one person will come, like me, my junior year. But that was a growing opportunity for me. And I think it's so important to grow where you can. Like, what do you have control over? Like, find a church where you do connect, even if it's still pretty hard to find community. And then the second thing is hope. And I think that's what I had with GCU. I knew this is a season, it will end, and I know I'm going to GCU, and I know there's so many solid Christians who are actively seeking God. That's what I had hope for. But also during that time, it's important to follow God, and I wish I had done a better job, but yeah, just listening to podcasts or sermons and doing Bible studies and not worrying about what people think. So I was asking my parents a lot of questions too, and
That's awesome.
I wasn't as like afraid as I had been before.
That's so cool. I think it's really good what you said about hope, because I truly think that's like our hope for eternity is what
Yes.
keeps us going as Christians. But then there are smaller hopes that you have for this life that keep you kind of kicking, you know?
Yes, yep.
It's like
So
you gotta
true.
have something. Like you can't be going aimlessly, don't have any vision, don't have any passion. Like you have to feel that purpose in your calling and what God's doing that's bigger than you.
That's so good. And even today, our pastor was talking about hope and how we should hope in the promises that God has made. Like, we will be with him for eternity if we believe in him. Like, that is a hope we can for sure hope in. But there are also things like going to college, like that wasn't guaranteed that I would find a super good community. And so, yes, while it was hopeful, ultimately my hope was in Jesus and eternity with him.
That really is a good distinction.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, like,
Yeah.
exactly what's ahead, but having, like, a hope that God has good things because he promised that. I know you were talking about, like, starting a Bible study or something like that. I'm also curious, like, to know where do you start reading the Bible and stuff? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but how do you know where to even start asking questions, or who do you ask questions to, or how do you open this big book and go like, I'm going to start reading there?
Yes, so I would say there's so many answers and there's no like right answer. Everyone I feel like says John, which is so good, and that's a great book, especially if you haven't heard anything in the Bible before. But for someone like me in high school who did know the gospel, I think the most important thing was to read Paul's letters to the churches, because it's so loaded with everything you need. It's like it will equip
really
you for
is.
every situation. And like Romans is so helpful. Romans 8 is there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Like, whoa. And then it says like you will suffer with him now, but you will be glorified with him later. And that's super encouraging. There's so much more there. And like Paul talks about how we do what we don't want to do and we don't want to do what we do want to do. And like he's just like hitting every point. Like, yes, we struggle with every one of those things. And then I'm actually going through Colossians right now with a life group on campus, and it talks a lot about legalism and how that church was caught up in so many false teachings, and Paul was bringing them back to the basics. Like, no, it's only through Jesus. Like, there is nothing else. There are no rituals you need to do. Like, it talks a lot about like circumcision, because that was a debate with the Jews, like if you're uncircumcised or circumcised or Jew and Gentile, and they would like separate themselves through those different things. And then Paul was saying, no, there's no difference, Jew or Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised. If you know Jesus, then you are saved. And like that brings people together. Just throughout all of the letters, there's so many good lessons to learn. Yeah, 2 Timothy and then Peter, and there's so many good ones. So I wouldn't say there's like one, but if I did have to pick one, I would say Romans, because I think it's so encouraging. And that's what I actually did read my junior year.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I found a couple verses in my Bible, and literally I just took like 5 minutes. There's so many other verses that I could choose, but just to give you like an example of the things that Paul teaches, Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." And like that's so good in high school to hear that, like talking about what you talk about. And then 2 Timothy 8 and 9 says, "Therefore do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me his prisoner, but share in suffering for the gospel by the power of God, who saved us and called us to a holy calling, not because of our works, but because of his own purpose and grace, which he gave us in Christ Jesus before the ages began, and which now has been manifested through the appearing of our Savior Christ Jesus, who abolished death and brought life and immortality to light through the gospel." Like, whoa, there's so much. And it even says, "For which I was appointed a preacher and an apostle and teacher, which is why I suffer as I do." And then he says, "But I'm not ashamed of the gospel." And like, that's so good to hear in high school and like in any season of life. But especially in high school, this is super encouraging for me. And then 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so the power of Christ may rest upon me. So these are just a couple verses, but
nuggets.
Literally nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah.
And like when you're in a situation where you don't have amazing Christian community, it is so hard to stand strong. And I think these verses, these letters that Paul is speaking to the churches is so encouraging, because even at school or like a friend group, it can feel like a friend group is going the wrong direction. And so it's so important to have this wisdom to equip you. And I think Paul is almost like a mentor for these churches. So reading these is like having Paul as a mentor.
Yeah.
I think. So that's why I love his letters. And Romans is a super good one to start with. But to answer your other question about how to find community and how to go out and ask questions, I would say going to a youth group or going to a teacher. If you go to a private school like me, I wished I would have gone up to teachers and just asked them questions, because they do have so much wisdom. And again, it's so easy to care about what people think of you, but just go out and be bold and ask questions. And then if you have amazing parents like me, like I asked my parents lots of questions, and that was super helpful. And yeah, and always be careful to make sure you agree with them, because they may be wrong too. So anyone you ask, like, it's so important to check that back with the Bible and see, is that true? But yeah, I would say in high school, summer camps and camp counselors were super helpful for me and really strengthened me in my faith and encouraged me.
That's amazing. I also want to like kind of go back to what you were saying about like, the verses that you read, because it just reminded me of like how you were able to stand strong in Christ and be a light, even though you weren't feeling it necessarily, because it wasn't your strength. And that's like the cool thing about knowing God, is that in those seasons, like even though they're so hard, like you still will have the strength to endure, because it wasn't yours anyways, you know?
That's so true.
The fact that you're able to still be strong and bold in your faith is just a testimony to that.
Because I did not feel strong in my faith at senior year, and I don't feel like I was a light, but standing apart, I think, is helpful, and there's so much more I wish I could have done, but God is the one that gives you the power. So
yeah, and he
so
still gets the glory. Because we're broken vessels, even if we think we're doing well. Like, we're not. We're still broken. So that's amazing, though. And thank you for sharing those verses, because I feel like they're very important. So tell me a little bit about how things went from going from this private Christian school, like in high school, to another private Christian school,
Very
but this
different.
time at GCU with thousands of students. How was that? Like culture shock?
Yeah, I would say my friends agree as well. There was so much friendliness that we were met with, and so many students who were eager to learn more about God. And even if they weren't solid in their faith in high school or didn't know Jesus before, like there were so many people who just wanted to learn more about God and wanted to go to every gathering and every chapel and church and Thursday night. And there's just so much community that I didn't have before. That was like so encouraging. Like I was like so excited. Also, there's local outreach, and so you're helping people, you're going to church all the time, and there's like no lack of learning more about God and meeting people who want to be missionaries and pastors and are just eager to learn more about God. Yeah, it was night and day. But yeah, then after that first year, I was super encouraged. But then my second semester, I realized that I was putting all of my identity in God in church and going to chapel and like doing all these things versus building my relationship with God by reading my Bible and having a relationship myself like I was. But because there were so many highs, I wasn't seeking God myself. That like snuck up on me, and I had this super hard class, business law. I was trying to write this essay. It was like a case law study, and I had just spent the whole weekend at our sister-in-law's bachelorette party, and so I didn't have time to like do homework over the weekend. So I was stressing about this, and it was due the next Sunday, and it was a super long essay. And so I didn't reach out to any friends this week. Usually I'd plan and do all these things, but I didn't reach out to anyone because I was like, I need to lock myself in my room and get this done to maintain my 4.0. And yeah, and then I just isolated myself, and I didn't have a great relationship with my parents because I wanted them to think I was doing super well, and I didn't want to reach out when things were hard. And so I didn't feel like I had anyone to like reach out to. And so like, yeah, I reached out to God, obviously, but it was a very like dark time in my life. And I ended up meeting a friend in the elevator, and she invited me to another church. Usually I'd go to Christ Church, but she invited me to Unified. And I was like, honestly, sure. So then I went, and that was like huge for me. And exactly what he was saying was exactly what I needed that night. And so that was a huge answer to prayer. But that really showed me that I had been putting my identity in the wrong things without knowing it. And I was really just moved by like the spiritual highs, and I wasn't seeking God on my own. And then my old temptation to be the best in school and like have a 4.0 and prove myself through grades and successes
the
came
old
back.
Identity.
Yes, my old identity came back. And then I was like, what if I do bad on this test? Then my family's gonna be like, what is she doing? And you guys don't even care. And so it's like all these lies were coming back, like you're gonna do bad in school. And then I just had to catch that and realize, no, my identity's in God, and like go seek Him, and also seek my relationship with my parents again.
I feel like that's a really good point that you made, especially with kind of isolating when things get hard, because you want people to think you have it all together.
Yes.
And then that's kind of what we do with God, at least for me, where I'm like, oh, like I don't want to reach out because like I'm not doing well right now. Like I haven't been spiritually active, so like I don't want Him to see me. Like,
yes.
You're like, bro, what?
You think you can hide from God?
Yeah.
Like, wait, no, God literally knows.
Yeah, it's like Adam and Eve in the garden hiding from God who made them and sees everything. It's like, what is happening right now?
What are we doing?
Literally, but that's so cool that you saw that identity shift, and then you were able to go, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm not giving the enemy a foothold. I'm going to reconnect with my parents. I'm going to reconnect with God. Because the spiritual highs, the mountaintop experiences are really important for your faith. But then you do have to make sure that you're daily walking with God.
Yes.
But it's just a process.
It is.
Perfect.
That's also something I wanted to point out about this podcast, because while it's so good to hear what lessons we've learned on our walks with God, this is not something to put your faith in. Like, put your faith in they experienced this, or I experienced this, and that's why I believe in God. Like, it's so much deeper than that. And these are good for building your faith and strengthening your faith, but ultimately your faith should be in like what Jesus did, and knowing that that is the only way we have life. And there's so much more than spiritual highs or mountaintop experiences or testimonies even that we should be rooting our faith in God alone.
Absolutely. It reminds me of when Peter is like, some say you're this, some say you're that, and then Jesus is like, well, who do you say that I am? Because it doesn't matter what other people, I mean, it does, it can build, it can help you kind of formulate your opinion, but ultimately it is a personal decision. It is a personal choice to walk through this like spiritual experience with God.
Yes.
And it's faith, and you have to like actually devote your life to it, not just other people's, not just their experience, but yours.
Yes, that's so good.
Okay, so you went through your first 2 semesters at GCU, and you loved it, and then you experienced some challenges. So tell me what it felt like going back to Oregon for the summer and being in that community again.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this is something a lot of people struggle with after college. And so yeah, it's a great question. But I would say the summer was super hard for me for a couple reasons. I felt like finals week came. I finally finished that class, business law, that seriously, like, I will never forget that class. It was horrible.
And she didn't fail, just so you know.
I did not fail. I got a B, my first B for so long.
Which is literally
fine. Oh, I don't even care now. But it was so, like, hard for me, and I was, like, so thankful to be done with the class. But while I finished my last test, everyone was moving out. Parents were here unpacking students, packing up for, like, the summer, and I was like, I just finally finished my class, and now everyone's gone. So that was so hard for me because I just built this community and it was so much fun. And I just loved like seeing my friends, obviously. And then the thought of like going back for 4 months was like kind of exhausting. Like that's a long time. I was trying to think like, what is the summer gonna look like? And I did a prayer night with my friends, and we made these bouquets. Me and my roommates went and got flowers from Trader Joe's and some cards, and we all wrote prayers out to God on these cards. And it was I want to find my card because I just talked about like what I was thankful for that semester and what I had learned, and then we all talked about what our summers were going to look like and prayer requests for the summer so we could be praying for each other. And that really was helpful for me. I think it's helpful to write down your thoughts after an end of a season and beginning a new season, just to process where you're at and what your next steps are, because sometimes it's hard to even know what the next step looks like. But for me this summer, I was going to go back for a month, and then we were going to move to Arizona, and then I was going to do Busy Bees and babysit the rest of the summer. But that plan didn't go to plan. So we went back. I was only supposed to work at Chick-fil-A for 1 month. I ended up working the whole summer.
I forgot.
And that was so hard for me. That was my 4th year at Chick-fil-A, 4th summer, and I just did not expect that for myself again. I thought God had other plans for me, and it was hard because I really just did not have like the mindset going into it to expect that for myself again. And going back, living with my parents in Oregon, where I'm literally about to move, so it felt hard to like invest in friends when I was about to move. It felt like wrong, honestly. And so it was a hard season for me, for sure. And my parents know that, and I like cried a lot. And it was good for our relationship because they got to see me like vulnerable, and I like reached out to them more than I would have before. And yeah, it was just a super good season and really helped me for the next season as a life leader. But it was also very hard because I didn't have that community again, to be rooted in my faith. And thankfully God totally pulled through and brought that for me.
So I feel like what you said is so helpful, especially because I know a lot of college students experience that whiplash. They're at school, they're getting all this community, and now they're back home. And again, it's like temptation kind of creeps in, I feel like old patterns.
Habits.
Yeah. So how did you navigate that, going back and then going back to GCU now, being a life leader?
Yeah, so going back, it honestly felt like GCU had never happened. And it was almost like a lie from the enemy because so much growth had happened at GCU. And then I was like, I'm back at like square one, almost like back in my old house in the same community that was so hard for me. And like where my identity was in running, in academic success. And so that was so hard for me going there and feeling like GCU was like a dream. Like, did that really happen? Like, was I really in that great of community? Did I really have all these cool opportunities, and did I really learn this much about God? And so that was super hard for me. And then it was hard to read my Bible because there were no spiritual highs. And so I just had to read it and like trust God. But then I did find super good community at the end of the year, or end of the summer, which was so good and such a blessing from God. But it was hard to leave because then my parents did move, and then it felt like, why did I come back? Get to know people and find this amazing community just to leave again. Yeah. And so that was hard for me. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm so glad I know those people. And even if I don't see them much, like, it's okay. So I'm thankful for that experience. Yeah, and then going back to GCU, it was super helpful to have lived that summer feeling depressed and uncertain, and then coming back to GCU, I got to be in the same apartment with girls who were going through the exact same thing I had gone through freshman year and feeling isolated, and I got to encourage them, and then I got to encourage girls who were also feeling depressed in this new environment. So just like I felt depressed and like had a hard time that summer, they felt that way here at GCU, and so it was helpful to have lived that to then encourage them. Yeah. So I feel like God totally provided, and I got to see the reason for all of that was to help someone else. I got to have a super good life group. It wasn't everything I'd ever expected, but still God moved and God worked. And even if that was just my roommate coming, that was still encouraging. And even if that was just me preparing for a life group and learning more about God, like God was working in me. Mm-hmm. And so even though it felt kind of discouraging if there weren't a lot of girls coming, God was still working and it was still such a blessing. So that was such a good year. This year was amazing. Yes. Of course, there are highs and lows with everything, but it was amazing compared to last year.
That's so good. And last year was really good too.
Exactly. So
just building on top. Yes. This year's going to be even better. Like, just wait. But I think it's interesting because the spiritual, like, low that you experienced last summer, looking back, you kind of see it as, like, a spiritual growth moment.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, like, in the moment, it feels like God's not working, or, like, I'm not, like, letting God use me in this season, or this is, like, kind of a waste because I'm not growing. But it actually seems like, from what you've been saying and from what I've experienced too, it actually is a huge faith boost.
Yes.
Even though you don't see it in the moment. And then you felt like, oh, I'm going into this ministry opportunity to pour into all these girls. But it turned out maybe it was more of a ministry for yourself. You can't just like name what something's going to be, like what God is doing. You can't just go like, oh, I see God's doing this. Oh, God's like working in this way. Like, He uses every season for different reasons that we don't even see in the moment, which I know everyone knows, but it's just cool to hear your story and see how you just had no idea what God was even doing.
I had no idea what God had planned, but it's so cool to see what, like, after, a couple months after, oh, that's why God did this.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will never know why God did something, but we know, like, we can trust Him, and that's so good. And yeah, so that was encouraging. And my head life leader was super encouraging. And she was like, life group happens outside of life group. So I would knock on doors with my other life leaders and we'd ask for prayer requests and give out candy. And it was super cool because a lot of us did have trouble having girls come to life group. And I think it is because in an apartment, you do feel so isolated. And even roommates aren't as close as roommates in a dorm. And so they're not going to like go to their life group like together. So it's just a different kind of, I wish I would have done a better job, but my head life leader was super important and just motivated me to get coffee with girls and encourage them that way, one-on-one, even if they wouldn't come to life group. And then my roommate came to life group, so it was like a one-on-one anyway. So it was awesome, but it just wasn't what I had expected. So I had to kind of reframe my mindset going into it and see the blessings that God did have for me.
And now it's cool because now you're stepping into that head life leader role, and now you're going to be able to help those same people who are feeling the same challenges that you felt when you were a life leader. And it's just, the process just continues.
Yeah. So I'm super excited. I'm leading a Bible study this summer, and there's so many amazing girls who are coming, and I'm so thankful for them. And it's really been cool because I think sometimes it's easy to think that you're like the leader, you need to have it all. But I think in this Bible study, everyone has so many good things to say, and we're really just helping each other and answering questions for each other. So
that's
awesome. It's been really good.
The collaboration is very important. Man, well, thank you for sharing all that. It's been so fun to hear like your story from your perspective and like through the lens of sharing it, because I know like the events that you've gone through, but it's cool to hear it replayed and like the little background details that I never got to know. So thanks for sharing. And are there any last like tidbits you want to share with the podcast before we finish up?
Yeah, I would just say you're never too young to put your identity in God, and it's also never too late to put your identity in God. Because I think there's so many times I would start reading my Bible and I'd see so much I didn't understand, and I would just get exhausted and overwhelmed by it and stop reading consistently. And so I would just encourage you, if you're struggling to read your Bible consistently, just start and don't worry about how much you know. We're never going to feel like we know everything. We never will come to a point where we know everything about the Bible, have a perfect answer for everything. That's just not how life works. So I would encourage you to read the Bible consistently, build your relationship with God, and that's the most important thing. Just building your relationship with God, putting your identity in God, and giving yourself the tools to combat anything that comes your way that's overwhelming or exhausting, any seasonal challenges or anything else. And just really be rooted in your relationship with God more than how much you know or anything like that.
I love that. I like the tools, like building up your tools. And also, like, you never are too young to start. Literally, Jesus welcomed all the children, and they can know God just like adults, and sometimes better than the adults.
Yeah.
So I love that you say that. Yeah, you're never too young.
You're never too young, and you're never too old. So
yeah, that's also true.
However old you are, it's the perfect time to start.
Yeah. Well, you've given so much good advice for people to start building their toolbox. So thank you for sharing everything. Thank you for letting me host the podcast.
You're a good host.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting, and super excited for the other podcasts coming out. We're doing 6 episodes for the first season just to kind of get a feeler of how the podcast should be in the future. So super excited for those to come out. And thank you guys for watching, and comment down below if you have a topic in mind that you want me or my next guest to talk about. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.